Uh, just from experience, it's gonna take a while until everybody arrives here at this place. This is the nature of these things, but we slowly get started. So welcome everybody to this LinkedIn Live on how to stand out from the crowd, the art and science of started branding. Yes, we're excited as well. I'm glad you're all here today to join us for this conversation. I'm so happy always to see a couple familiar faces that always show up for these events, always come to support us. Really appreciate it. And before we get started in the topic of today, I would love to know who is here with us today. Please, everybody, introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from today. So, and if you are new to LinkedIn Live on how this all works, and if you've never done it before, you will find the chat. And I've seen a lot of you have already found the chat, which is amazing. I didn't think it was that intuitive. You will find a tab here in LinkedIn where it says comments next to networking. This is where you can type and let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from today. Let us know a little bit about maybe the startup you're working on currently. Let us know who is here. This is also the space where you can, throughout this whole this live stream, can ask questions. We will address them later on during the Q&A section. Hello, I'm so excited to see all of you trickling in. It's amazing. Thank you so much for showing up today. It's an exciting topic that we have prepared for you today. So while you are introducing yourself, and welcome to all the corners of the world, welcome to Germany, welcome to London. It's amazing to see so many people joining in from different corners of the world. We'd also love to introduce ourselves so you know who has the pleasure of talking to you today. And I might as well start. My name is Victoria, and I'm originally from Munich, Germany, and Munich is currently in a snowstorm. So naturally, I am in South Africa, Cape Town, trying to get the last bit of sun and pump myself up for the rest of the year. I'm also trying to learn how to surf. I actually did it this morning. It was one of my better lessons today. I have to say, I only drowned almost twice, so I would count that as a win. And besides that, I'm also a brand strategist. I'm a trained marketer, and this is very much my role as the founder of the Phoenix Brand Consultancy. But I'm not alone in this. I have a partner on my side. Rebecca is very much the heart to my brains, the artist to my strategist, and I'm very honored that she's joining me here today for this conversation. Please, Becky.
Amazing. Thank you for your very warm welcome introduction, and hello to everyone joining. It's lovely to see all of you coming in. I unfortunately have not escaped the snowy weather to South Africa. I am stuck in London, where we have about 3 inches of snow, which is actually really lovely. It's feeling great. We went for a little walk today with our dog. I'm a brand designer. I'm kind of the yin to Victoria's yang of a fully formed brand design studio and brand strategy studio. I'm also a self-development junkie. So I love learning everything, psychology, different ways to find purpose in our lives, which also ties in very, very nicely with brand design. And I'm also a mum to a very cute puppy.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And thank you also to everybody who's already introducing themselves. This is amazing. I see we have a US heavy and also a Germany heavy group here today. A lot of people from Munich, people from Berlin. I see, hi, Kendra from Chicago. Pleasure to see you all here. Dawn is tuning in from the UK. Amazing. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's get started, I say. So just as a little bit of background, right, we've been throwing this name around, but what exactly is the Phoenix Brand Consultancy and what is it that we do? It is a brand consultancy where we help founders of early stage startups with memorable branding and razor sharp positioning. So you see this topic is very much tied into our expertise. And on top of that, Rebecca and I are on a bigger mission, as well. It is a huge passion and desire of ours to close the gender funding gap. So this is what we aim for on top of just the basic services that we offer. This is the bigger goal that is behind our drive and our motivation. And so what are we gonna cover today? So today we're gonna be covering 3 sections. We're gonna start off with the science of startup branding. This is the section that I'm gonna own. I'm the strategist here, so I'm gonna show you some hard numbers, some facts, some evidence that you need to know and to understand what is actually the science behind branding. Are there any numbers to support this? What if you are a very numbers-driven person, which I see a lot of you are, this is what you need to see in order to know, like, this is actually worth your time. And after that, I'm going to hand off to Rebecca, and she's going to cover the art of startup branding. This is very much about how to craft a memorable brand, what goes into those decision makings, how can you actually create a brand that is unforgettable. And in the end, we're going to cover a short Q&A section. I have received a couple questions already in advance from some of you, and you also have the chance to ask questions throughout this live, and we will address them in the end. All right, fantastic. So why does all of this matter? And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here in the beginning and going to tell you that nowadays, most of the branding out there, especially from startups, is just expensive decoration. And it is expensive decoration because founders treat it as such. Right? They treat it as like, this is just the cherry on top, and we will take care of this at some point later. And this is a designy thing. This is not a business thing. And this is part of the reason why right now it's just expensive decoration. And at worst, it could also be a liability. So this is not where we want to go. So it is our mission today to show you the best case scenario for your startup. What could it look like if you really lean into the power of branding and use it as an asset? So we'll show you some research and some great examples that prove that branding can do a lot of heavy lifting for your startup, and it can help you gain market share, it can help you gain profits and longevity, and we're going to show you how that works. So it is time to start off with the science of branding. And for that, I would like to take you on a short journey through marketing history. And I want to show you some, 3 relevant eras in marketing history that are tied to branding. And I promise you it's not going to be boring. I picked the most exciting pieces of marketing history to show you what we got. So let's start off and we travel back in our minds to the early 1960s. And I want to hear from you in the chat if you have ever heard the term differentiate or die. Is this something that ever came across during university, during your training, your apprenticeship, or are you completely new to differentiate or die? I'm very curious about that. And actually, I think it's very hard not to ever come across this expression because it just has been that cemented into business development and marketing in the early 60s. So what is this all about, and why are we talking about this? Obviously, as business owners, it is in our interest to understand why customers choose certain products over others, because ultimately we want them to choose ours, right? So there's a lot of research done to investigate and find out why customers choose certain products over others. And this is where the whole idea of differentiation came from. So it is basically the reason why customers choose a product over the competitors. And then early in the 60s, it started with the idea of the USP. That idea is now, I would say, a little bit dated. But generally speaking, it was the idea that there was one singular focus, one key differentiator that was the reason why people picked you. So USP means unique selling proposition for everybody who has never heard that term before. So there was one idea, like there's one thing that is different about your product, business, or service, and this is the reason why customers choose you. You probably remember there's Volvo, and they positioned around the idea of safety, and there's FedEx that positioned around the idea of overnight delivery, right? There was one singular thing. And that made them strong. Nowadays, the idea is a little bit dated because it's very, very difficult to have just one singular key of differentiation. And it's also pretty easy for competitors to just copy whatever this USP is you're having. So nowadays, marketers use a different version of differentiation, which is called positioning. And this works with a unique set of associations that are tied to only your brand. So whereas USP was just one, positioning is a combination of associations that in the combination are unique to you. So this is how it all started. And you see back then, it was all very much focused around image, right? The quality of how your brand is perceived, of how your product is perceived. And it was very much, a lot of thinking involved in that. And it has also to do with just how much we knew about the human brain at this era, right? We thought that, and we probably overestimated how rational human decision-making is. And that's why we thought people need a lot of rational reasons in order to do their rational decision-making, in order to pick products or services over others. Anyhow, that's the first era of marketing that is relevant to us today. And so you see marketers and business developers and product owners, they all rejoiced happily for decades until the early 2000s. And this is when things got a little tricky and the marketing landscape got turned upside down. This is when the researchers from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute challenged the overpower of differentiation. Actually, they found when they analyzed marketing data, they figured out that people rarely perceive products as different when they surveyed them. So within a range of products, they actually figured out people perceive them as very similar. That leads us to question like, oh, so they don't buy them because or choose them because they're differentiated. There must be another reason why they choose them then. So, and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute also had an answer for that. There was a new theory and a new arm of brand strategy that evolved that was all around the idea of distinctiveness. So they thought that, and proved it also with a lot of very interesting data, that people choose brands because they notice them and remember them better in purchase situations. Those products jump out to them because there are sensory cues attached to those products that actually are easy to remember and to notice. And you see, this is the era where branding actually came out of the drawer and got its time to shine. So so what are these sensory cues and these assets, right? These are just fancier words for branding and branding elements. So they can be different types of assets, right? The most famous ones are logos. You probably all remember logos. You know a lot of logos, and they're usually tied and quite unique to a company. But there are also colors and color combinations. There are mascots. Actually, mascots are some of the best distinctive brand assets, and they're the easiest to remember alongside with jingles. I don't know about you, but I can still, I'm not going to do it right now, but I can still sing lots and lots of jingles that I heard in TV ads during my childhood. They're extremely memorable, and when you do it right, they're uniquely attached to your brand, and in that combination make up the distinctiveness of your brand. So you see in the second era of marketing and the emergence of distinctiveness, everything was about quantity. Whereas the first era was about the quality and how the brand is perceived, a lot of rational decision-making, rational thinking. In the second era, it was very much about heavy penetration, actually. How often have you seen these assets? How often have you been in contact with this logo, with this brand name? And you reinforce these memory structures in order to have people remember you and purchase you. So in the second era, everything was focused around brand awareness and increasing awareness. And it actually took into consideration that we learned that human decision-making actually is highly irrational. Whereas we thought we're very rational beings and think a lot about why we pick a certain thing over another, we learned that actually humans can be, in a lot of purchase decisions, highly irrational. So the second era takes that into consideration. All right. So what happened after that? The battle of the two, how did it end? So you see, ever since the early 2000s, there has been like a barrage, right? And also a little bit of bickering, to be honest, within marketing researchers. What is the stronger force? And it was actually helpful for research because everybody wanted to prove their point. And now we can actually look at the data and find things that are very interesting. So when you compare the rational versus the irrational, the positioning of the old era versus the branding is so strong of the second era, it's all about image versus it's all about awareness, you will find out that actually it is a joining of forces. Both of them are important and both of them are needed, and they actually make each other stronger. So Kantar, which is a research institute, has found some amazing data and actually published that when you use them in a combination, so a combination of meaningful differentiation, that is the positioning piece, and distinctive brand assets, that's the branding piece, actually results in a 3 times market share gain. So you see, they're bigger than their sums, right? When you use them together. And this is actually where we are right now, in a consolidation phase of marketing, where we realize it's not about fighting those forces. You will need positioning, you will need arguments and rational arguments why people should choose your brand, but you will also need distinctive assets that will help you create this awareness and people remember you. So it's the joining of forces that is relevant. So these are the 3 areas, and this is where we left. So what are you going to do with that? And I've received these questions, I think 3 or 4 times in advance to this LinkedIn Live. People ask me, Victoria, how do I deal with this, right? How do I prioritize? What is the right timing for me to step in the limelight? When is the right time to professionalize my brand? When should I invest and when should I experiment? And I have an answer for you. So you see, startups live in a certain growth cycle, and you could name them differently if you want to, but generally speaking, it starts with an idea stage. There's an MVP stage. MVP stands for minimum viable product. So this is like your first version. You're having the first iteration. Then you go into a growth phase, and there will be a maturity phase. And generally speaking, when you are in the early stages of idea and MVP, I encourage you to treat your brand just like your product. Let it grow, let it evolve, do a lot of market research, and throw a couple spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, right? Find out how memorable is this actually. Is this color memorable? Is this pattern memorable? Is this font sticky? And also, does it create the brand image we thought it would? Right? What do people remember after that? What's the feeling they have attached to that branding? Be very experimental about these things in the beginning, and don't be too precious about it either. But when you do these experiments with what I would like to call the MVB, the minimum viable brand you're having there at the beginning, take particular care with how professional it looks. Right? You're trying to gain early tractions, get your first users, speak to your first angel investors. Your brand should look like it's legitimate. It should look professional. It should look like something you would trust. Because naturally, your product is very likely to be an innovation and be very new to them. And when your brand looks unprofessional and untrustworthy, it's not going to help your cause. So experiment, but make sure it looks trustworthy and credible. And what happens then? Naturally, in your life cycle, there will be a time when the tides change. This is when you want to be more public facing. This is when you want to gain some traction, get user growth. This is where you have a public launch, maybe a big PR campaign. This is where you increase marketing spend because you want to get in front of many eyeballs. And this, and ideally slightly before that, is the perfect time to professionalize your branding. This is really the time to get laser sharp with your focus, make sure you get rid of all the clutter, and really nail down one creative direction where you want to go with your brand. All right, so this is my practical advice that I would like to give you. Isn't differentiate. I'm going to answer a question that came across at this moment. I think this is pretty relevant. I'm going to read it out. Isn't differentiation created by distinctive brand assets? They're kind of one and the same. No, they're not. Distinctive brand assets are visual cues. So, for example, colors, color combinations, logos, fonts, patterns, celebrity faces, taglines, jingles. You see, these are sensory cues that will tell you what kind of brand this is. And as Rebecca will explain a little bit into detail, some of these can evoke a certain feeling or evoke a certain memory you have. Right? And this is a bit of the gut feeling that is then attached to it. But it's not differentiation per definition. Differentiation is something that is very intentional through your written word, through your copy, through your campaigns, through your websites. This is how you position the brand also rationally. Right? And this differentiation and distinctive assets are not the same, but they can work together in tandem to really create an image that you want to. But they can also work apart from each other. All right, fantastic. Rebecca, I'd say at this point, wait, missing the recap. So what have we learned so far? We have learned that branding can help you gain market share, profit, and longevity. But in order to get there, you should aim for a combination of meaningful differentiation, that is the positioning part, and distinctive brand assets. This is the branding, the visual part, exactly. So this is what we have learned from the science department. Now I'm really curious, what says the art department?
Yes, thank you so much. It's so interesting to do a deep dive on all the ways that marketing and our thinking about branding has changed over time. So onto my passion. I can't wait to talk to you about the art of startup branding. It's one of my favorite topics. And I would say that my superpower is translating that strategy into visual design that kind of captivates and inspires. So creating memorable branding is basically about curating a feeling in the most simple and unique way. I'm assuming that some of your branding goals, if they're any different to this, then please drop them in the chat so we can understand a bit more. But I'm guessing that you would want to communicate your uniqueness, so your unique positioning in the market, your unique material, like the way that you want to interact with your customers. You want to become magnetic to your ideal audience. You want to have raving fans. You want to be perceived as an industry leader. You want to be kind of trailblazing the way forward for your industry. You want to intrigue and tell a story. So you want that richness to your brand. You don't just want it to be kind of surface and ignorable.
Yeah, ignorable, I think, is the last thing we want to be.
Yes. Do you want to move that on?
No.
Great. So step number 1 is, what feelings do you want to create with your visual branding? I've included, I know Walt Disney is a little bit controversial these days, but I've included this idealistic view of Walt Disney. So this is a great example of creating a theme. Not only have they created actual theme parks, but it's about creating a world where the values of the brand can live and they can exist. Yes, so we want to focus on existing codes. So we're not recreating the wheel like we touched on earlier. Differentiation isn't all about doing something brand new, but it's about doing it in your unique way. And to do this, we can create unique combinations of color, type, illustration, theme. There are infinite ways to do this, which is very exciting. Okay, number 2 is avoid blanding. This is a term that I love when Victoria uses. Hold on a minute. Okay, great. So really what we want to do as startups is create intrigue and create that uniqueness. And what you can see here is that these more established brands have kind of gone with trends to become really stripped back. But yeah, for startups, I really think that it's good to lean into uniqueness and to do that through more than just the logo. a brand is about so much more. It's about all those sensory cues that we touched on about earlier, and yeah, we want to spark memories and feelings.
Yeah, I tell you, blending is really my worst enemy.
I love your bland bingo you do on stories too.
But in the end, it's a problem, right? If you look at it like Yves Saint Laurent, it just had so much character, so much personality before that, and now everything got standardized in a way that it's just nothing stands out anymore visually, and that is a problem.
Very much so. So here at Phoenix Brand Consultancy, we have our own method of trying to see what we can do with your positioning. So there's a lot of expensive ways to do this with market research. So you can go to panels, but what we like to do to make it a little bit more friendly to a startup budget is to kind of put about 50 of your competitors together and see what codes are being overused in your market. So what colors are always popping up, what fonts, what different combinations are already being used, and a lot. And then if your brand can stand out from that, that's a good place to start. Okay, I wanted to do like a little experiment with you guys. So I'd love to know, what kind of feelings does this color evoke? What kind of brand do you think would adopt a blue like this?
Yeah, I like it. To me, it's a very like electric blue, like very highly saturated, right?
Yeah, it makes me think of boldness.
Bold, techie. I always think like
tech. Okay, interesting.
Right? Software. That's I think how I've also used it in the past. Really nice shade of blue.
It's a good color. Great.
IT,
yeah. We've got a lot of tech-based things.
Right, very serious color also.
And then if you go to the next slide, blue. Oh, I think there's a bit of a lag here. So I'm seeing like blue equals trust, cool, calm, confident. I love this method. Great. Supermarket. Oh yeah, I didn't actually think of this color being travel company. Great. So when I put this color next to it too, now what do you think? Your perception of the colors might change. You might think of a different company. And do you guys have any guesses of like what company would use both of these colors together as their main colors? There's going to be a lag, so we could just move on to the next slide and surprise them there. So it's actually a female, a femtech company, which is in the sexual wellness industry, which is very surprising. If you remember our matrix before, there was a lot of pinks, a lot of like very
saturated,
heavily, and very stereotypical too. And what I love about Dame is that they've really gone the other way. They're bringing in boldness. They're bringing in, sexual wellness is quite a taboo subject. So kind of beating that right where they are with just, reinforcing it with color is a great way. And also the illustration is so beautiful. So they're not being, what's the word? Like very literal. They're using intrigue to capitalize on that.
Great example. I love that brand. And you know what's interesting? They like kind of attach to that, right? They attach to that feeling of innovation, right? Of technology with the blue, and then attach their business to that. And it's a really smart way, and a really interesting and beautiful way as well. Thank you.
That's great.
Sorry.
No, you're welcome. Absolutely love it. Someone said, I love it. Is Dame one of your clients? That would be amazing if they were, but unfortunately not. And if someone also said they would never guess this. And as you can see from this, it's clearly working because Dame has raised 7 million in their Series A funding, which is fantastic to see, especially for us as backers of female-led businesses. Okay, so we're now on to the third stage, which is about removing subjectivity. And this is very, very important when looking at your brand assets, because a lot of the time as a brand designer, it's usually people feed back to me with what they like. And what we need to remember is that it's about your customers. So who are you creating the world for? And are the brand assets going to resonate with that audience? It's also a very good idea to look at what communicates your big idea in the simplest way. So really refining. I use this example from Starbucks. You can see they started out with a very literal, illustrated siren. And what I love about Starbucks is they use this siren as like a way to lure in people who love coffee, which is a great way to like attach to myth and create some like mysterious, intriguing elements to your brand. And you can see over time this is simplified. You could argue that they could simplify a lot more, but I really love that they're still relating back to that myth, and I really like the brand. And my last point on this, some practical advice, is to use 3 to 4 brand codes consistently. So we don't want to throw everything at people. It's so much better to use just a few and use them consistently to start building that rapport, that trust and familiarity with your audience.
Yeah. And if I might add to that, those 3 to 4 codes you chose, use them everywhere. And I'm being serious about this. You can overdo your logo, but you cannot overdo your codes. So if you chose a certain color combination, a pattern, a celebrity, or whatever it is that is part of these codes you chose, overdo them about 900%. And this is when they start to stick, right? Internally, we have this inside view where we feel like, oh God, I can't see our yellow anymore. If you feel like you can't see your yellow anymore, this is when maybe some people will remember it, right? So you have to overdo them, put them everywhere. No campaign, no visual should ever go out with those 3 to 4 codes attached to them. This is really much about you creating that brand awareness, and when you get to that point where we really want to be.
Amazing. So to recap, and some questions you can take away to discuss with your team when you're commissioning branding or maybe creating it yourself in the first stages, is how subjective are you being with your startup brand? So are you really relating it back to your target audience, or are you listening to Bob in accounts who doesn't like triangles, doesn't like pink? Like, you've really got to stick to the strategy. And how does your branding make your target audience feel? I've touched upon this a lot. What kind of codes are you using there to create a world? And does your brand stand out or fit in with competition?
All right, great. Thank you, Rebecca. These are a lot of great questions to take home. And yeah, if you're like a solo founder, something for you to contemplate on your own. If you have a team, something to discuss with them. Like, really, how deep does your branding go? How many layers of myth and story are there? Or is it all very obvious and all very much the same? And if it's very much the same, it might be time to, start working on it. And we do understand that doing it all on your own can be a bit overwhelming. And that's why we have an early Christmas gift for you, actually exclusively for the people who have joined this live stream today. We are offering a one-on-one brand consultation. This is an hour-long, you and us time, where you get to ask us anything. All the questions about your brand, your special case, everything you want to know from 2 experts. This is our gift to the first 3 startup founders who reach out to us after the event. If you want it, be quick. We don't have unlimited resources here, but we're giving away 3 of these hour-long consultations where you really get clarity and direction for your own case. This can be positioning. This can also be a branding case that you have. All right, but I think now is a great time to go into the Q&A section of today. Like I said before, you will find the way to ask questions. This is where it says comments. This is where you can type out your question and let us know what you're curious about, anything about the science or the art of branding. And I'm also gonna answer a couple questions I received beforehand already, because there were a couple themes I found there. So I have received the question a couple times, how do you balance your own brand? So this is like the personal brand as a founder of a startup and the brand of your business, right? Should you build both, or should you just focus on the startup? It's a really interesting question, a very relevant question as well. And the answer is both and. Definitely both. And I have found some really interesting research earlier this week that said that founders who use social media regularly raise about 20% more capital than the ones that don't. Right? This is a very strong and convincing case for if you're still unsure about personal branding and if you should really use social media for your purpose. I think this is the sign. Yes, you should do it. But of course, these are different, right? Your startup brand and your personal brand are two different point of views. And your personal brand as a founder has an advantage that your corporate brand will never have. You have authenticity attached to you, right? Because you are a person, because you're a human being with emotions and the background and their own everyday stories. There's so much authenticity that you can leverage as a person. So this is really much when you build your own brand as a founder, this is what you can leverage, right? You will show the vision. Your startup has a big vision. This is where you want to go. This is the kind of world you want to contribute to. And you as a founder can show how you do this every day, right? You use social media, you use your Instagram stories or your LinkedIn post or your Twitter or your Discord, whatever it is that people do nowadays. You use that to show how you as a person are living up to that vision. How do you build this vision, right? And this is where you show the behind the scenes. This is where you show the human behind it, the human that builds the team, right? This is what the investors want to see as well. Who is this person? Can we trust them? Do they have what it takes to do this? So you see they're connected, right? And what connects them is the vision. This is where they overlap, and this is how you can leverage them. So really, you should invest in both. If you have zero budget at the moment and everything is bootstrapped, then start with the personal brand and build out the startup brand at a later point. But I would always start building a personal brand as a founder. And I have also received a second question beforehand that I wanted to address. A founder has asked me that their brand is moving from a B2C space to a B2B space. And she is now curious, should they adapt the brand identity, the brand look and feel for those two different audiences? And that's a really interesting question, right? Because I don't know how you feel about this when you hear B2B, immediately think like, oh, business to business. This is like those robot stuff. We do the dark blues and the sans serif typeface, right? This is like immediately your associations with like B2B. And if those are your associations, you have already learned, you should go against them, right? But generally speaking, you address humans, no matter with what version of it, right? Even B2B is humans in the end. We are addressing human beings and therefore not robots. So you need to build a brand especially for them as well. But the question that is interesting to ask, so you don't necessarily have to change your branding just because you go into a B2B space. What you have to ask is, has anything changed with the brand image you want to create? Has anything changed with this new audience? Who are these people? Right? What do they surround themselves with? What is the competition they see all the time? And from that point of view, you will have to ask critically if you need to adjust your branding according to that. So it's not just because of the move from B2B to B2C, or you could also do it the other way around, right? They don't necessarily need a change in branding, but you have to do your strategy first to understand if you need to make some adjustments in branding for them. But in the end, brand is always the people's perception of you. Brand is something we try to create, right? Rebecca and I, this is our job. We try to create intended brand image. This is what we reinforce. But in the end, the brand always lives in the brains of the audience, right? What they think about you, what they feel about you, what their associations are. And this is what we need to put ourselves into, right? We need to walk in their shoes in order to really craft a brand that impacts them in their life and really stands out from the crowd. All right, fantastic. I would say if there are, Rebecca, did I miss any questions or was that it?
I don't think so. I think the only one else was the differentiation and distinctiveness question or comment, but I think you covered that.
All right, fantastic, everyone. I hope I covered your questions. If there's anything, right, that's more pressing, reach out to us. Make use of this bonus call if you need it, right? That's when we can really go in depth with your questions around your brand and your particular case. And for now, I would love to thank everybody who showed up here live today. I always love, that fire, that energy. It's always really great to be here with you. I'm also thanking everybody who's watching this as a recording. I understand Christmas is demanding. Some people are still some open tasks. So I really appreciate you watching the recording, and thank you for your trust with this topic and for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Victoria. It's been amazing to share this space with you. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.